Okay, so to preface, right, this video has already been covered by a much more knowledgeable person, Forest Valkai. If you guys don't know, Forest is a host on the line, and you know, I don't know him all that well, but he seems like a really great guy, and he did a pretty good job refuting this video. But because his following is so large, the Reasons for Hope guys decided to jump on his coattails and respond to his criticisms of their content. So I've worked in some of the standard responses that are usually given that Reasons for Hope gave in response to Forest's stuff. And I mean, Forest's responses are pretty similar to mine. I mean, it didn't really affect my knowledge of what's being said, other than, you know, Forest did do the legwork and figuring some of the misquote the quotations out that are wrong, and they go through a lot of trouble to try to reclaim the quotes, which we'll cover here in a minute. If you want to see Forest's perspective, definitely look up Forest and this fossil evidence, or fossils don't prove evolution. I'll try to have a link in the description after the live stream tonight, but it's a pretty good video. Tonight, we've got Reasons for Hope, who's going to be demonstrating that the fossil record doesn't prove that evolution is a fact. And they're only going to be using the best that creationist apologetics has, which is not that good, but I feel like it's the only arguments that they can really make about the fossil record, and these guys are pretty much going to make them. So let's get on into the video, shall we? You ready for the video there, honey?
We've unearthed millions of fossils around the world, so with all this evidence, so to speak, it's clear that the fossil record proves evolution, right? Well, actually, no. Didn't when Darwin was alive, and hasn't since he's been gone. In fact, Chucky D himself knew this when he wrote the following: "Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this, perhaps, is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record." Okay.
So I stopped it right here because obviously I feel like it's a basic rule of apologetics, especially creationism, to quote things out of context. And that's exactly what's happened here. Now, in the response video to this, they had a bit of a problem with Forest pointing out that in the very bottom right there, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's got like a citation, right? This citation is wrong if you actually buy On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. You can go to Amazon and get it. I went to Amazon and I bought it, and just to, you know, to do my own fact checking about it, because down there in the bottom it says in chapter 10, right? It's not in chapter 10, it's actually in chapter 9. Now, in the response, they point out how their particular copy of On the Origin of Species has it in chapter 10, not chapter 9. They also further quote some of Charles Darwin's stuff like surrounding this passage, and it has totally different words than what appears in on the Origin of Species. So I'm not exactly sure what copy they have. Like, I don't know if it's like some kind of like apologist abbreviated copy or something. I don't know, but obviously there's something fucky going on with, you know, their citation down there. But also they're misunderstanding what Charles Darwin is saying. And not only have they taken him out of context, the context in which he brings this up in is very important, because what he's saying is he's discussing the pushback that could be levied against his idea. And one of the pushbacks, which he says is a valid pushback, which is a tough pushback, is the fact that at the time in which Darwin was writing this, the fossil record was not as completed as it is now. Like, they didn't have as many fossils. They didn't understand a lot about fossils, or as far as like the breadth of the fossil record. They didn't understand a lot. So obviously the fossil record at the time didn't support evolution, but what Charles Darwin was able to do is to hypothesize that any fossils that are found in the future would only support this idea of evolution. In whatever way evolution actually took place, you will definitely see relationships between these fossils, and that these fossils can be grouped either morphologically or by other traits that each of these fossils have. There's a whole field of science that deals with organizing the species and into clades and all this other stuff. So at the time that he was writing this, obviously the fossil record did not support him, like as far as the fossils that they had. It didn't support evolution because we didn't have as many fossils as we do now. Well, this does not fucking affect the guys over at Reasons for Hope. They have an argument against that. But the important thing to know here is that this is taken out of context. They're being anachronistic and importing their idea of the full breadth of the fossil record into this time, because they're making it sound like Darwin knew how many fossils we'd find or how many fossils there are and the connections between the fossils, and yet he still said this. That's just simply not true, and it feels like they're just taking this quote out of time and place.
Is there a problem with using that quote to say that there's no evidence in the fossil record to prove evolution? And I say no, there's not.
Right, and of course this guy wouldn't. So this is obviously after after Forrest responded to him. So he's trying to make an argument against Forrest, who made the exact same argument. He says, no, there's no problem with using this quote, but there is a problem with using this quote because at the time, the fossil record didn't support evolution as far as the fossil record being proof of evolution, right? But now the fossil record, we have a more complete picture of it, not complete, but we have a clear view of the fossil record now than obviously we had in the late 1800s. You can't use the quote to say that there's no evidence in the fossil record for evolution now. That's being anachronistic. You're taking Darwin out of time and place, and you're using Darwin to prove something that Darwin didn't even consider, know about, or write about. So yes, this is a disingenuous use of Darwin.
That quote absolutely supports what we made the claim, is that the fossil record proves evolution. Debunked. No, it does not.
Yeah.
Darwin knew it. And guess what? People today know it as well.
You can't say that Darwin knew it. Darwin didn't know the kinds of fossils that we'd find. He didn't know what fossils existed. What he did was he provided a hypothesis that the fossil record would fall in line with the idea of evolution, that further discoveries of fossils would only further support evolutionary theory. And we've actually been able to use evolutionary theory in order to predict where to find fossils. So because the fossils exist and the fossil record corresponds to this idea of evolution, because evolution's a fact, that means that we can use evolution to figure out where we should find certain fossils. That's how we found Tiktaalik. We were able to predict where we would find Tiktaalik and what kind of conditions in the ancient earth would need to be present for Tiktaalik to thrive in its environment, where that environment would be. And so we've been able to use all of these different hypotheses in order to find certain fossils. To say that the fossil record now is disproven by Charles Darwin's statement, like, oh fuck, what was it, 200, we're working on the latter half of 200 years ago, like, that's just insane. But you can't use that as evidence. I know that they want to, but you can't.